Hi, I'm Amy Bernstein with Bernstein Realty, and welcome to our podcast. I've gotten so many comments when I came on the air and decided to launch the podcast last week, and so many people were excited to tune in. So I'm super excited. But what I'm really excited about is my guest today is Deborah Duncan. And Deborah, as you know, is the host of Great Day Houston on Channel 11 KHOU every weekday at 9 a.m. And I always say that she is my absolute lifeline to life. I mean, I go to her on everything and anything, and she always talks me through things, and she's that person that just educates me to all things not real estate that I don't know. So I am super excited that she's the guest on our podcast.
And that's the benefit of doing a talk show. I have access to all the greatest experts, including you. But I just got to tell you, for years I drove by this maroon and white sign that said Bernstein Realty. And I'm like, I wonder who that person is. And one day I was like, I'm going to find out who that person is. And there it is, Amy Bernstein. I was like, there she is in the flesh. She's a real person.
And then a great friendship blossom.
Right. Yeah. When I think of home, I think of a place where there's love overflowing. All right, so Amy, since the beginning of time, human beings have needed that shelter, right? But when it comes to America, there's that thing called the American dream. And I remember my son when he was 5 years old, we were driving down the street one day, and he saw a homeless man, and he said, "Mommy, what happened to his piece of earth?" I said, "What do you mean, hon?" He goes, "That man over there, he lost his piece of earth. Everyone needs their piece of earth, that place where they can, think and rest and make dreams come true." It has always been a goal for a lot of people. It's been easier sometimes than others. Right now, it is much harder, which is why what you're doing with your podcast is so important, so that people understand all the ins and outs. Because let's face it, it takes professionals like you. We don't understand it as much as we think we do. It's not as easy as, "Hi, I'd like to buy this house," and then you get it. There's a lot in between.
It's interesting. We have some agents in our office that have been customers of the firms before they got in the industry. Mm-hmm. And now, fast forward a year or two down their career, they say, "Oh my God, we had no idea how much went on behind the scenes." Yeah. So having a good representative, if you're the listing agent, the seller's representative, that's such an important role. If you represent the buyer as the buyer's agent, that's such an important role to guide the buyer all the way from finding the home to negotiating the home
to actually, can you afford the home? Because I'll tell you what, right now we're talking about what it takes, the buying power right now to get into a house.
Yes.
And there's talk of having, programs where they help people with their first time home buyers with a down payment. We went through this routine before. And in 2008, when we had that big crash, what we found was a lot of people probably should not have been in that home yet. But I remember a great realtor sitting down with me saying, "Okay, your monthly payment is not the same as what it's going to take you monthly to stay in your home."
Yes.
You will talk home buyers through that. Now, obviously, you deal with some that are on the higher end. That's not an issue of theirs. But others who are looking to get in, you even walk through that with them.
But you know what? Even at any price level, people want to understand what the monthly outlay is or the annual outlay to own that house. I mean, a lot of people aren't familiar with tax or property taxes, especially when they move to Houston.
Yeah.
So
I moved to Texas, right? Because we're a property tax state versus an income tax state.
Yeah. So people are always a little bit overwhelmed when they hear about our property taxes. A lot of times they do the math and they go, well, it's kind of a trade-off to having income taxes versus property taxes, but it is something to really understand. Yeah. And the benefits of making that home your homestead.
Yeah.
And what those benefits do as far as the discounts that you get on your property taxes once the property's homesteaded, and the amount of maximum that the property can be raised every year. That's just homestead. But I'll tell you, the hot button today in home ownership is insurance.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Because you have to have it, but it's really expensive right now.
It's unbelievably expensive. We had an insurance person in our office last week, and they were talking to us and said, insurance has gone up about 30%.
That is crazy. What else has gone up 30%?
Last year?
So, yeah, newsflash.
And they expect it to go up another 30% next year.
And if you have another disaster, guess what happens, right? So newsflash, in the coming months, you will be doing specials on just insurance and how to negotiate
for
that,
sure.
right? And then there's property tax evaluation, which I learned from you, is that, you get that bill, when you get a bill from like a governmental entity, you think, okay, this is it. Well, not necessarily.
Right.
You can fight your property tax evaluation.
And a lot of people, A, don't know they can fight it. And B,
Because it's coming from the government, right?
Because you get this in the mail, you're like, this is what I owe. Number two, they think, it's a whole vacation day away from work to do it. And they don't realize that you can do it online now. There's different ways to do it. And the third thing is they don't have the comparables to go down and protest it, and they don't understand it. And it's interesting. I have customers of mine that will call me and say, I have a comp that just sold a month ago, and I just got my statement, and I'm going to use that comp. And they don't know that the comps they have to use are the year prior, because the property taxes are based on whatever the value is on January 1 for that tax year.
Yeah.
So this year's property tax protest could only use 2023 comparables, nothing that's sold in 2024. So we're there, the real estate professional is there with our client, not just in buying the home, but throughout the process. I mean, we had so many people that after Beryl, who do you use for tree service? Who do you use for electrician? Who do you use? I mean, we want to be that person that not only helps you purchase the home through the process, but is there with you long afterwards.
It helps you to protect your biggest investment.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You touched on something earlier when you said a lot of people who move here, and of course it's that thing, location, location, location. What's great about realtors who have been in this business for quite some time, lots of areas. I remember when I first moved here, I was like, I looked at the West U area because it was close to where I worked at the time, and I saw the prices and I went, I can go to Sugar Land and get, the swimming pool and the land, the whole palace. And then the realtor looked at me and she goes, do me a favor, drive it. So yes. I drove it, and in theory, I would have been late for my own show.
Yes.
Right? I was like, she looks at me at my watch and she goes, so you made it here at 9:15. Doesn't the show start at 9? I go, traffic. So it made sense for me to look at what I'm getting. It wasn't apples to apples, it was apples to oranges. And the convenience of being down the street meant that I was paying about the same, but I was getting a little bit less. But I also got something that she said, look at this medical center down here. It ain't going away anytime soon. Right. So when I sold my house, it literally doubled in value in 2 years.
Wow.
But that was somebody who knew the area, knew what it was that you wanted. Like what's important to us. Is it the school district that you're in? Is it the school that your child might go into?
Yes.
If not, maybe not as important for a couple that doesn't have children, right?
That's what I was going to say. You settled into West U, and then when you had your son, you quickly knew that you wanted to be in the Spring Branch Independent School District, so you moved to Memorial. So, that's what's really interesting about the market, is that there are people that really rely on you for telling them these things, right?
Because I didn't know. Houston was new to me.
Yes.
I lived in San Antonio and Austin and Dallas, but I had not lived in Houston before.
Yes.
I moved here from New York City, which, to your point, the property tax thing, I bought a house in Dallas, moved to New York City and went, there's no property taxes here, but there is a city tax and a state income tax, right?
Yes.
But moved back here, and then it was like, now for that property tax thing.
Now, what do you think is the easiest part about buying a home? What would you say, through the whole process, what would you say is the number one easiest thing for a buyer?
Can I tell you? Really? You really want to know? The easiest part of buying a home for me was signing up with the right realtor.
Oh, perfect.
No, seriously.
I did not tell her to say that.
No, but seriously, because I don't know all that stuff. Neither am I going to learn it. I know that we should probably pay more attention because, again, it's the biggest investment most people will make.
Yes.
But I needed somebody to walk me through it who I trusted also.
Yes.
Because they were representing me.
Yes.
Not they weren't representing their commission.
Yes.
They were representing me.
And so you're super busy. I mean, we're lucky
But
today.
I also don't have the mental capacity. I'm just going to be honest with you. I know a lot of things. That's just the area that I'm not good at.
Yeah. I always say that you are if I was on that Who Wants to Be a Millionaire show, you would be all three of my lifelines, because you know so much about so many things. However, it's interesting because you are a person, I think, and I know you pretty well, that appreciates great service.
Yes.
And appreciates people that can teach you things that you don't know.
Yeah. Speaking of, a lot of people are confused right now about the whole commission structure, and also like if I'm driving down the street and I want to see a house, I want to tour it, that has changed. So let's go into a couple of things that are I think it's going to take several months before people kind of yeah, right. It's one of the biggest things that
you see my gray, you see my gray hair.
We can take care of that, Clairol number 5, right? But anyway, it's confusing because things have been kind of status quo for quite some time. So let's first address the commission structure.
Yes. So dial back for 1 second. It's a great lead into that.
Back up the truck.
Back up a second. You know what I think is the easiest part about the home buying process?
Finding the home.
Because everything's online. So people think, well, I found it, and so my job is done.
Yeah.
The hardest part is everything that happens from the time you find it.
Yeah.
From the loan, from the inspections, from the negotiation to the
closing,
title,
everything, yeah.
all of that. So that's what the role is. Okay. Now, dial forward.
Yeah.
What was the question you just asked?
Oh, I was saying that a couple of things that have changed, right? And one is the commission structure.
Yes. So that's probably the major change, right? And it's really revolves around commission, but it revolves around disclosure of that commission and who is responsible for that commission. So NAR,
National Association of Realtors.
Yes, yeah, thank you. The National Association of Realtors just made a settlement with a class action lawsuit, and through that settlement came several changes to our industry. Mm-hmm. And to be honest with you, there are major changes because how we are handling things now, and the paperwork is all changing. And
is it a bigger change for realtors, or is it a bigger change for consumers?
It's going to be for consumers, I think. But for us, our paperwork changed as to when we need to give the proper paperwork and when to have these discussions and how to have these discussions and whose responsibility is it to pay the fee. These are all the changes. But the reality of it is, it's the same thing we've always been doing. It just got so blown up in the media as far as all the changes. It really is the same. Number one, real estate fees have always been negotiable.
Okay.
They've always been negotiable. So
there was a standard, but you didn't have to abide by that.
There is no standard.
Okay.
There is no standard, and that is the misconception in our industry. There has never been a standard. There is a
because people would think 6% and the 3 and 3, but you didn't have to abide by that 6 and 3.
There is a conceived standard of what you just said, right? But there has never been a standard, right? It's conceived. The consumer had a conceived standard, but the reality is our fees have always been negotiable, always. And so what's happening now, and the biggest changes in our industry that will affect the consumer is, number one, let's talk about the buyer side. You're driving down the street and you want to see a house. And as much as you're one of my dearest friends, you would call me and say, hey, there's a really cool house. I want to see it. And I say, great. You know what? Let me meet you there. But prior to that, or before I take you into the home, no matter what type of friendship we have and that we know each other so well, I will have to have you sign a buyer representation agreement. And you're going to go, Amy, you know I'm not serious right now. I'm just starting the process.
Yeah, I just want to see it.
And I just want you to open the door and let me see it. Yeah. I cannot do that now unless I have a written buyer's representation agreement. Now, you may ask, what does that buyer's representation agreement say? Well, it says that there's a short form and there's a long form. The short form is saying, look, Deborah, if you decide to buy it, this is what I expect to be paid by you. And if not by you, we can ask the seller or we can ask the seller's agent to pay me. Yeah. But this is what my fee expectation is if you purchase this house. Okay. That's the short form. Yeah. Or you can pay me on the short form to open the door and show you the home. You can pay me $1 if that's my charge. Or you could pay me $100. You can pay me whatever I say on that form. But it's your responsibility to pay it. Okay. However, if you go see it and you did not expect to buy it, but you say, God, Amy, I love this home, then I have more responsibilities to you than just opening the door on the short form and showing you the home. I have a responsibility to really serve as your real estate broker and guide you as your buyer representative from the time you saw the home until the time you close on it, and everything in between. So I'm going to say to you, Deborah, you know what? Now that you want to buy this home, we're not just looking at it, you want to buy it, I'm going to ask you, Amy, to personally sign it's a long form, very similar to the form we always use prior to this change. And it's going to say that I am your representative and I am responsible for providing you comps, giving you my opinion of value, negotiating on your behalf, helping you with your inspections, everything that goes into the home buying process. I am your representative. So that becomes a longer form. But how do I get paid? Well, I'm going to ask you to sign the form, and I'm going to ask, and on that form, I'll take it, perfect. And on that form, and you don't get it back, on that form, it will tell you what I'm being paid or what I'm expecting to be paid. And you can say, that's a lot of money to come up with that amount of money.
Right, because you already might be coming up with a down payment, right? So now this is on top of the down payment?
Yes, it's on top of your closing costs and the cost of your inspections and everything else. So you may say, you know what, Amy, can you ask the seller to pay the fee? Yeah. So then I would make a phone call to the listing broker and I would say, is your seller prepared to pay a fee to the buyer's representative? And their listing agreement may already have addressed that and should have already addressed that, will have already addressed that, whether that seller is prepared to pay the buyer's agent their fee, to pay or not to pay their buyer's agent their fee.
And correct me if I'm wrong, if they're making a profit on their house, it may be a little softer for them to be able to pay the fee versus the person who's doing the down payment and the everything else.
They may look at it as the cost of doing business to bring the buyer.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that what they're prepared to pay is what's in my buyer representation agreement. So my agreement with you may be more or less.
And ultimately, I'm the one responsible for it.
Ultimately. So it could be that the fee is shared.
Yeah.
It could be that you're paying part of it, and it could be that the seller's paying part of it.
Basically, what you said is negotiable.
It's negotiable. And you, by the way, when I tell you what my fee is, when you sign your buyer representation agreement, you would probably say to me, because just like buying this watch, is there any flexibility in that watch, right?
Right.
And so you'll find out when you talk to that buyer's agent what their fee structure is, because not everybody's fee structures are the same.
Yeah.
So it really becomes I think the biggest change in our industry is just the conversation becomes a lot more conversation surrounding these fees.
Yeah.
Because you may say, you know what, Amy, I don't want to pay that fee. And then I would say to you, either I'm willing to work with you on what my fee structure is, or I may say, you know what, Deborah, that is our fee.
Yeah.
And
you're going to work for that fee.
And I'll earn that fee. Yeah. But you know what I always say to my customers? If you feel at the end of the transaction that I did not earn my fee, I want to know.
Yeah.
Because I hope that it's not just a fee that I'm throwing out there. I hope at the end of the transaction, I added true value to your transaction.
And convenience, value and convenience and your time and your understanding. And
absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely.
So it sounds like to me, and I'm just kind of trying to get it all through my brain, that now it's just a much, like you said, conversation between all the parties involved.
It's true. So let's just say that you want to sell your home and you call me to talk to you about selling your home. One of my conversations with you is, this is my fee as your listing agent who represents you. And are you wanting to pay the buyer's agent? Yeah. Do you want to pay the buyer's agent to bring the customer to the home? Because prior to any buyer's agent showing your home, they're going to call me. The fees used to be posted on the multiple listing service. So a buyer's agent could look online and go, oh, that's what I'm being paid if I show this. That's what I'm being paid if I sell this. That's what I'm being paid.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. So that's probably one of the largest changes is the fee structure of what the seller is paying is no longer posted on the MLS, the multiple listing service. So now the buyer's agent is going to have to call the listing agent and say, do you and your seller work with buyer's agents? And we'd say yes. However, we are not willing to compensate the buyer's agent. We're going to look to the buyer to compensate the buyer's agent. Or yes, we work with buyer's agents and we will also compensate. We will pay the fee. Well, then the next question should be from the buyer's agent is, what fee is it that your seller or you are willing to pay? And then I will know the fee, and then I'll come back to you and say, out of my fee of the buyer's representation agreement, X percent of it or X amount of it is being paid by the seller. And so we can either negotiate that or you can accept that and pay the difference.
This is a pickleball game. Back and forth. Amy, I know
that is I have several agents that would like that analogy, actually. It's just a lot more back and forth. But again, it's funny because it is the same way that it was always. Yeah. But it's just now out there in the headlights of this fee is just everyone's
a little more
focused
etched
on
in stone.
It's a little more, it's at the forefront of everyone's mind. Like, for instance, what have you heard about the changes? I've heard so many different things.
And I'm not going to say what I've heard because it was wrong. And there's so many things out there that were wrong. And even among agents who, and look, no shade at all, because it was kind of, they're trying to decipher some stuff, right?
Yes.
So I think that it's going to trickle in until it stabilizes for people to understand it. But I want to thank you. And by the way, thanks to all the agents out there, because everybody thinks this is the easiest job. I know after COVID, when we saw a lot of inventory move quickly, I can't tell you how many friends are like, oh my gosh, I'm getting my real estate license because, I'm going to do that on the side. I'm a pediatric neurosurgeon, but on the side, when I have extra time and I have 8 kids, but on the side, I'm going to go ahead and sell houses. And a lot of them realized how hard it was because they're like, oh, I can't do that on the weekend. Or I can't do that in the afternoons.
Yes.
I can't. So, they realize how tough it is. So kudos, hats off to all of you real estate agents, especially the ones who've been out there doing it for a long time in the ups and the downs of this business. I know you're going to cover so many more topics in the coming days, weeks, years on your podcast, but thank you so much for taking the points we just discussed and driving them home. Get it?
No, I like it. But you know what? I want to thank you. I want to thank Deborah Duncan. Deborah Duncan is the host of Great Day Houston on KHOU TV every morning at 9 o'clock, Channel 11. And how lucky am I to be able to have her as a guest on my podcast? I'm just super excited about that. What an honor and a privilege. And it's just interesting because Deborah's one of my dearest friends. I respect her so much professionally and personally. And she's been listening to me, I don't want to say complain.
No. I take the complaint out of it. When we're out in social situations where you should be, like when most of us are off of work, you're sitting there, you got to take this phone call, got to get this right, got to make this text. I'm sorry. You're always apologizing. And I always say, don't apologize because you have a lot of balls in the air. You're representing people with the biggest investment they're ever going to make in their lives. It is.
And that's the reason to really ask that buyer's agent, number one, what experience do you have? Mm-hmm. And number two, what is it that you will do for me?
And with references, knowing, you're right, what is it you do for me? How hard you work for other people. There's sometimes people just don't have that same work ethic or put that same amount of time.
And the negotiation is a very key part of this, because it's interesting. When you bought your last house, you didn't have to worry about the fee because the fee was, you assumed the seller was paying it, and it was built in basically to the sales price.
Yeah, I never saw it.
Right? So it wasn't a conversation. It was assumed that the seller was going to pay it. Yeah. But now with this new way, it becomes a conversation head on, and there is a chance the seller won't pay it. And all of a sudden, you're looking at this dollar amount that before was built into the price of the house.
And now it's an extra charge.
And now it could be an extra charge. And I think that really is probably the biggest change for the consumer. And I don't know that the consumers today know that before they pop in to see a house, they will. And by the way, this is not a Bernstein Realty thing.
No.
This is not a
This is a national thing.
This is a national. This is national. Yeah. So this isn't just something that came out of Austin and now we need to do this. I mean, this is real and it's here to stay. So I said we had a sales meeting this morning, and I said in our meeting, I hope that in the next few months, this just rolls off our tongue, just like everything else. Right. But change is hard for people. But this time, the change isn't just the real estate broker. Yeah. It affects the buyer and the seller as well.
So, with that said, listen, I'm buying my house. Where do I go? Where do I go buy my house? don't buy two houses.
No, you didn't sign the buyer's rep agreement with me yet. You can't have it.
Okay,
Put it down.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Thank you, Deborah Duncan. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you. So I hope you'll stay tuned for other podcasts in the coming weeks and months and years ahead, because we're going to hit all sorts of topics pertaining to real estate. It may be decorating, it may be insurance, lending, or just home tips, maintenance tips, all sorts of things. So I hope you'll stay tuned to our podcast, because we're super excited to launch it. And I want to give a shout out to our media director, Twan. He is fantastic. He encouraged me to do this podcast, and he motivates me every day to be a better person in front of the camera. So thank you very much, Twan. We appreciate you. So thank you for tuning in.
All right, dinner tonight. Whose house? Your house, my house.
Exactly.
Yeah.